Uh, Good morning and welcome to Northwest, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I'm Tom Ott, my pronouns are he and him, and I'm your worship associate for this morning's service. Today's sermon will be delivered by Pastor Joshua Berg, who is joining us virtually from Burbank, California. We welcome him back with us this morning. We also have Julie Bodson, Colin Variest, Susie Kinnan, and Adarshan Taris, who will be providing music and leading our communal singing this morning, and Bojana Lamparska will be playing the piano for some of the other parts of the service. If you're a visitor online and would like Northwest to stay in touch with you, please fill out the visitor form you will see in the chat box, and if you're with us in person, you can fill out the visitor sign-in form in the atrium. So please greet your neighbors with a wave from wherever you are, whether you are here with us online or here in person. And then before we begin the prelude, we'll take a deep breath and settle into a time of worship. Thank you for that. Okay, we begin our service today with a land acknowledgement. We collectively acknowledge that Northwest Unitarian Universalist Church occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. In particular, the congregation resides on land ceded in the 1807 Treaty of Detroit. We recognize, support, and advocate for the sovereignty of Michigan's 12 federally recognized Indian nations, for historic Indigenous communities in Michigan, for Indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and for those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. By offering this land acknowledgement, we pledge ourselves to justice and repair, both with the land and with the people. Okay. And our chalice lighting is, we light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, knowing this morning that many other Unitarian Universalist congregations across this land and around the world are doing the same. So we light our chalice with words from Melissa Jeter. We light this chalice today to illuminate our way toward love. Inside the womb of this waiting time, we are bathed in sounds, floating in love, growing out of our comfort zone. We experience love, sorrow, pain, and joy. There is a numinous quickening as we await a new world yet unborn.
Good morning. Our story is Harriet Power's Journey from Slave to Artist, Sewing Stories. This is by Barbara Herkert and illustrated by Vanessa Brantley Newton. Sing a ho that I had the wings of a dove, I'd fly away and be at rest. This was a slave spiritual. See that sweet baby girl lying on a quilt her mama made? What could she be dreaming of? On a plantation near Athens, Georgia, Harriet's mama worked from rise to set while Harriet slept between the cotton rows. Harriet grew up watching women reading, carding cotton, spinning thread, dyeing and weaving cloth. She learned that wild indigo made blue, hickory bark made brown, and cherry bark made deep red. She studied strong, stained fingers. Her heart beat to the booming of the loom. Slave women were involved in making textiles for the plantation. After they spun cotton into thread, they dyed it with natural coloring and wove it into a cotton on a loom. Uh-oh, I think we might be off a page. Go back. One more. Another one? I don't know. Maybe you got a different book. In the evening, the women gathered together to cut flour sacks and worn cloths into suns and moons and stars lions, birds, and elephants for appliqued cloth, legends of Mother Africa. Harriet listened to their voices hum through the quarters late into the night. Some slave women sewed all day for the slaveholder's family. Only at night they created for themselves. Applique is a technique where cut designs are stitched into the background fabric. The master frowned on slaves staying up late to sew. Most slaves were forbidden to learn to read and write. They passed on stories verbally and recorded them in cloth. Women sang and sewed by candle or pine knot light in rough log cabins in a section of the plantation called the quarters. Little Harriet placed cotton filling in the quilt. She held the pine knot light high. "I won't knot off, no ma'am." She was part of a sacred tribe. By a crumbling fireplace in the middle of the night, Harriet learned to sew stories. On Sundays and holidays, sometimes the master gave permission for a quilting bee. The women lowered wooden frames from cabin rafters. Long-limbed Harriet crawled under those big frames and watched needles dart through cloth like silver dragonflies. She thought, "Someday I'm gonna sew a magic world." While the mistress of the plantation usually supervised the sewing at Quilting Bee, the slave women could be their own artists, making designs with strips of cloth for a few daylight hours. They might have felt free. When the women finished sewing, making 2 or 3 quilts in just one day, folks gathered for peach pie and ginger cake, collard greens, and barbecue. While they gobbled up the grub, Harriet traced quilted shapes with her fingers. Her mama smiled. "Child, I think it's time you had a needle of your own." "Yes, ma'am." The men were not allowed at the gathering until the quilting was over. Then they were invited for a big meal, followed by a lively dance party. The women raised chickens and grew extra fruit in small gardens. They cooked in big open fireplaces. Strong-limbed Harriet helped the women sew. Afterwards, she danced at the frolic. Horsehair fiddles, cheese box tambourines, and sheep-bone drums formed the band. If Armstead Powers could capture Harriet beneath a quilt, he could claim a hug and a kiss. Harriet slowed her pace, just a little bit. Sure enough, Armstead caught her with a story. Young ladies gathered at Quilting Bees as much to dance and flirt as to sew. They danced the turkey trot and the Mary Jane. Buckets, pans, and grass reeds were also used as musical instruments. When Harriet and Armstead decided to marry in 1855, they had to get permission from the slaveholder. Part of the ceremony was jumping over a broomstick. The Civil War began in 1861, a bloody war to end slavery. Harriet and Armstead jumped the broom together when Harriet was just 18. Soon Harriet became a mama. She named her pretty baby Amanda. "Pray we stay together and don't get sold away," she said. Harriet wrapped Amanda in a quilt she made and held her tight as Civil War cannons fired. The army from the north marched into Athens. The Union soldiers told the slaves, "You're free. Hallelujah, free at last," Harriet cried. But trouble didn't end with the war. Oh no. Poverty raced through Georgia. How would Harriet feed her family? Amanda, Alonzo, Nancy, Lizzie, and baby Marshall, 5 hungry faces, 10 bare feet. "Show me the way," Harriet prayed. The Emancipation Proclamation declared the slaves free on New Year's Day, 1863, but it could not be enforced in areas still under rebellion. In Georgia, slaves were not freed until Union General Sherman's army invaded in 1864. Slaves in Athens were most likely emancipated sometime after the fall of Atlanta in September 1864. In Athens, the aftermath of the war was worse than the war itself. Food, medicine, and clothing were scarce. Smallpox ravaged the town. Harriet took up her needle, turning snips of calico and an old pair of dungarees into cloth, stories that warmed her children and lifted her from times for a while. "You gotta take what you've been given and make something out of it," she said. In addition to making quilts, Harriet may have earned extra money by sewing clothes. Armstead earned very little as a farmhand. Harriet saved every nickel. The family bought a little farm, a horse, a plow, and some seed. Now, plates of catfish steamed on the table, fat vegetables ripened on the vine. The children grew like the cotton Armstead planted. Cotton mills popped up all over Georgia, and folks celebrated good times. Sometime in the 1880s, Harriet and Armstead bought 4 acres near Sandy Creek outside of Atlanta. Their family fished and grew vegetables and profitable cotton. Cotton mills purchased cotton from local farmers like Armstead. Athens announced its own party, the Cotton Fair. Folks were abuzz about the craft exhibit. Who would win Best in Show? I reckon the good Lord gave me a skill, Harriet said. She snipped calico as pink as watermelon. She cut strips of cloth as green as key limes. Harriet sold stories of Cain and Abel and Jacob and Jesus too, familiar stories that formed pictures in her mind. She stitched Bible folks in scenes where polka dot camels and elephants and ostriches lived together in a fabric land. Harriet had grown up hearing Bible stories from the chairbacker, a slave who proclaimed he'd been called to preach. She might have sat in the back of the slaveholders' church. She was fascinated by circus animals. The Northeast Georgia Fair of 1886, called the Cotton Fair, included a Wild West show, several weddings, and a circus. Folks entered the craft exhibit, competed for Best in Show, but Harriet was not reported as the winner. Folks at the Cotton Fair gathered around Harriet's quilt. A young woman, Jenny Smith, offered to buy it. How could Harriet part with a piece of her heart? No, ma'am, not for any price. Harriet hung her quilt in the corner of the exhibit tent next to the seed displays, jars of pickles, mounds of potatoes. Jenny Smith, an art teacher, recognized it as a rare work of art. Dark days came a-knocking when the price of cotton fell. Harriet sent word. Would Miss Smith still like the quilt? Oh, yes. Harriet climbed into an ox cart, and as Armstead drove her into town, she cradled that quilt like a child. Harriet told Miss Smith, "You can have it for $10. I only have 5 to give," Miss Smith replied. "I reckon that'll do, owing to the hardness of the times." Then Harriet explained each story sewn in within the squares, like the lyrics of a song spun onto cloth. She climbed back into that ox cart, and as Armstead drove away, her lap felt as empty as her heart. Miss Smith wrote down Harriet's descriptions of the 11 panels of her creation. "It is my intention," Miss Smith wrote, "to exhibit this quilt in the colored building at the Cotton States Exposition in Atlanta." Now, folks were talking. Could Harriet make another story quilt? Oh, yes. She pieced together Bible stories and tales of real events in the sky, a meteor shower, bright lights burning in the night. "It was snow and fire," Harriet said. "On a day called Black Friday, the sky grew dark as midnight, and all the cows and roosters went to bed." Harriet delivered the quilt to some ladies in Atlanta, slipping their dollar bill into her apron pocket. Her heart was heavy. Another beloved sold away. Still, it pleased her to hear the women's praise. Some Atlanta University faculty wives saw the first quilt at the exposition and commissioned a second quilt as a gift for the vice president of the board. This time, Harriet mixed Bible stories with local tales and legends she'd grown up hearing. The meteor shower of 1833, Black Friday of 1780, when a combination of smoke from forest fires and thick fog and cloud cover caused an unusual darkening of the sky. We don't know how much Harriet earned for the second quilt, but it attracted a lot of attention. In 1902, Atlanta University held a conference called the Negro Artesian. Harriet's quilt may have inspired the event. Harriet never had much money. She didn't own much property. It was a struggle to get by. Her cloth stories lifted her to another world where suns and moons, animals and angels danced together across a fabric sky. "One day shall I reach heaven, and one day shall I fly." Harriet Powers died of pneumonia on January 1st, 1910. Now everyone can see the world as she did, for her work hangs in 2 fine museums and is celebrated worldwide.
Thank you, Sharia. Now our children, youth, and their teachers will leave the service, and they'll join in affinity groups making a special Mother's Day gift for their motherly figures. Let's see, today, Colin, would you like to carry the flume? Okay. So the youth will carry the chalice. It's been lit from the flame of the chalice in the sanctuary. Join us in singing the children's blessing. You may stand if you would like.
One purpose of a religious community is to encourage all who gather together to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will mutually support this self-supporting congregation and the shared plate recipient. Every other month throughout the year, Northwest shares 50% of the plate collections with the Southfield Emergency Needs Fund. Their goal is to help residents overcome personal hurdles to achieve a satisfying and productive quality of life. Human Services is a division of Southfield Community Relations. If you would like to donate, you can do so in a variety of ways that are now visible on your screen. And for those here in person, we will pass the collection basket for checks and cash. Our next hymn is number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song. Will be led by Susie Kinnan on either guitar or banjo. I suppose not both.
And myself.
Oh, okay, but
Thank you.
White.
Okay. The reading this morning is The Complexity of Motherhood by the Reverend Leah Ungiri. For those who have mothered, we thank you. To those who rejoice in the work, the role, the presence of mothering and mothers, we celebrate with you. To those who are in the thick of parenting children of any age, we appreciate you. To those who experience loss through infertility, abortion, miscarriage, adoption, or running away, we mourn with you. To those who have lost their mothers, we grieve with you. To those who have endured abuse at the hands of their mothers, we acknowledge you. To those who have experienced pain at the marking of this day, we witness you. To those who are single moms, grandmoms, stepmoms, foster moms, adoptive moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. May we reflect with gratitude on the wide spectrum of mothering that happens in our lives and in our communities.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here this morning. I won't be doing a traditional sermon this morning. My name is Joshua Berg, by the way, Pastor Joshua Berg, for anyone who doesn't know me. And motherhood is so complex, as we heard from Reverend Ongiri's reading just now that Tom read. It's represented by everything from the courage of the mothers in Ukraine who are training themselves to disarm landmines, to the frustration, which is very real, in the monotony of the bedtime ritual / struggle. It's very complex. There is pain as well as so much love and so much happiness. There's frustration as well as wisdom and cause for celebration. I once preached about the wisdom of my own mother. I think it was one of my first sermons. And as I prepared for today, I soon realized that I should not preach the wisdom of mothers. So I put a call out on social media for words of wisdom from mothers, and that includes anyone who nurtures another. And today, moms will deliver the sermon. I'll just be the conduit. So I'm going to read just some, I got quite a few, some of the many pieces of wisdom, followed by a video of wisdom from my own mother, and then a ritual to honor reproductive choice. So here's some of the things that people wrote their mothers said. There's some serious ones and some humorous ones, and they're all wise. The first one, I'm sure you've heard, shit or get off the pot. And the second one, related, every pot has its lid. Can you stick that lip out a bit further so I can sit on it? Just eat it. It all goes to the same place. Here's a good one. Wear clean underwear. You never know when you'll be in an accident. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything. This isn't a growth next to my ear. It's a telephone. Wait until I'm done to talk to me. My mom has said that one. Don't worry about getting older. It's better than the alternative. Is it going to make any difference in 5 years? Just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it. When you're older, you'll understand. Fix your face. Here's one my mom said too. I do not bake, I buy. If you point your finger at someone, there are 3 more fingers pointing back at you. I don't know this one, understand this one, but someone wrote, don't look at me in that tone of voice. Don't let them know you know how to type. Sure, that was from a different era. Never measure over the mixing bowl. Do not lick the shopping cart wheels. Would it hurt you to be nice to your Aunt Eunice? Eat dessert first. Life is uncertain. Never come to the end of a day without noticing an exquisite moment. I love that one. Do you want to be right or do you want to be kind? Buttermilk will solve a lot of GI problems. I've been taking that advice. There are so many more interesting and fun things to do than cleaning the house. Marry the person who makes you laugh. Even if the leftovers don't look like they fit in the Tupperware, they will fit in the Tupperware. You can only please some of the people some of the time, never all of the people all of the time. If you don't want it told, don't tell it. Don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. When you cut your finger, you bleed. That was my own Nana. Be good or be good at it. Don't bleed on the carpet. Don't push the river. It flows by itself. Just a few more. The success to any marriage is 3 times a day. Don't say anything. Or I'm sorry, don't say something. The days are long, the years are short. And probably the most important advice of all, always buy the most expensive toilet paper you can afford. And now, here's some advice from my own mother. Here we go. Share sound, optimize for video clip. Oh, no, that's there. Okay.
Please welcome to the stage, Mickey Berg.
Yo, thank you. How's my number one son? Okay. Yeah, it's a beautiful day out there.
Hold on, apparently we have no sound, so I'm gonna stop the share and try it again. Let's see here.
I think Lauren is coming about 2 or something,
And
but you can come whatever time you want.
I'm gonna mute some other people. Hold on 1 second. Let's try this again. Share screen, share sound. There we go. One more try. There we go.
Please welcome to the stage, Mickey Berg.
Until the age of 50, I wanted to be anybody but me. I wanted to be Barbie. And at 50, I found out I'm really more a lot like Raggedy Ann, and that is so much more fun. My grandchildren sing this song. What does the fox say? Heard that song? Well, you're looking at her. I'm the fox and I have a lot to say, but if it weren't for my hairdresser, I would health and energy, and they go on and on. And as the coach and trainer I am, I move them to action. Come on, take action on what you want to do. And I cringe when I hear more, I'm too old. It's too late. At the age of 50, I went back to school. I went to the University of Michigan, and it took a lot of courage, and I was scared. And my fears were grounded in a couple of facts. Number one, I'm going to be the oldest one there. Number two, what if they ask me a question? I'll be embarrassed in class because I won't know the answer. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, and that was a few hours ago. Well, some miracle happened. The first class I went to, I went in and the class is going on and somebody asked a question and this professor directs the attention towards me. Well, you have to ask Mickey that. She's the one who has the knowledge and experience in that area. And my self-confidence went from the basement to the sky. And unfortunately for my family, it's been flying high ever since. I knew that's where I had the knowledge to offer, the wisdom to this younger generation. And I thought it was great. Now, my Aunt Chili just passed away, 103 and a half. And she was a great conversationalist. And one of the last conversations I had with her when she was, maybe a month before she died, she said to me, "Don't look back. I have no regrets." Well, I always challenged her and I said, "Come on, you lived 103 years. You got to have some regret. Tell me." And she pondered for a moment and went like this and then looked at me and said, "I miss work." Here's a woman that retired well into her 90s, still drove herself to work. I said, "Well, that's great because I have a growing life coaching practice and I need some administrative help and you're so good at that. Why don't you come and work for me?" Again, she went like this and looked at me and then smiled and said, "Not today." My sister Sandy got polio when she was 9, and post-polio took her from this world when she was 59. But she did everything. Nothing stopped her. People forgot she had a disability because she didn't act like she had a disability. She did everything. She traveled around the world. She went to the University of Michigan. She had a successful business. Nothing stopped her. And one day she called me. She says, "I'm in Mexico and guess what I'm doing?" I said, "What would that be?" She said, "I'm going parasailing." I said, "Huh?" So you can't do that. Why not? Well, if you forgot, wheel yourself over to a mirror. You're a paraplegic. You don't have legs to land on. She said, "Don't worry, they'll catch me." I said, "Really, who are they? Do we know these people that are going to catch you?" "Oh, you're so silly." Calls me back later that afternoon and said, "I went parasailing. It was great. They caught me and I think I'm going to do it again." I went ballistic. I said, "Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? Aren't you afraid of anything?" And I'll never forget her answer. And I hope that you will never forget her answer. She said, "Yes, I'm afraid like everyone else, but I'm more afraid not to do it. I'm more afraid not to do it." I had a dream when I was young and into my teens and 20s. And my dream was that I wanted to marry a doctor. I never did. So I became one. I am Dr. Mickey Berg. I got my master's at age 54. I got my PhD at 67. And by the time I was 70, I wrote a book appropriately called "I Don't Want to Be Anybody But Me." How about you? How many of you are on Medicare or Social Security? How many are going to be someday? Then you all need to listen up. I also, by the way, have 6 children and 11 grandchildren, and did this all through raising those kids and helping with the grandchildren. I want to accomplish so much more in my life. How would you like to say someday what I'm going to say right now? At 103 years old, I have no regrets. How about you? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about the sound issues at first. And now we are going to, whoops, if I can find my screen. And now we're going to conclude this part of the service, the homily part, with a ritual of reproductive choice that was written by Julia Hamilton. This ritual, let's see here. Make sure everyone's set. Whoops. I can't see I can see, yeah. Vanessa and Diane are up there. Okay. This ritual may bring up difficult feelings for people in worship. So allow the ritual to take as much time as your community needs, as our community. I'm reading her introduction from Julia Hamilton. So just allow it to take as much time. The sanctuary that we create together is a container. It's a container for all stories. The ones we share and the ones we hold close and quiet in our hearts. The stories that bring us joy and fulfillment, and the stories that break us open. The stories that change and that grow with us, and the stories we outgrow and leave behind. Each and every one of you carries a lifetime of stories every time you enter this space. And this morning, there may be stories from your life that surface in unexpected ways. I'd like to invite you into this ritual, to hold space for your story, whatever your story may be. And if you need support after the service, please don't hesitate to reach out to our pastoral care team. As we light a series of candles for the different paths we have taken, if you recognize yourself in one of these prayers, I invite you to put your hand over your heart wherever you are and know that you're not alone. There is someone else in this gathered community holding their hand over their heart too. So I'll ask Diana and Vanessa to light the candles, and your response, the congregational response, please say, may the beginnings and endings in our stories be held in unconditional love and acceptance after each candle.
I light the first candle for those whose story includes the choice to end a pregnancy. The circumstances vary, the timelines of our lives are diverse, but each and every end is also a beginning. And so I light this candle for all who have aborted a pregnancy or partnered someone in an abortion for whatever reason, under whatever circumstance.
May the beginnings and endings in our story be held in unconditional love and acceptance.
That's your line.
I light the second candle for those whose story includes the unwanted loss of a pregnancy or a struggle with fertility. The circumstances vary, the timelines of our lives are diverse, but the pain of infertility, miscarriage, and stillbirth are too often held in silence. And so I light this candle for all who have traveled this path of loss for whatever reason, under whatever circumstance.
May the beginnings and endings in our stories be held in unconditional love and acceptance.
I light the third candle for those whose story includes the choice to give birth. The circumstances vary, the timelines of our lives are diverse, but the choice to bring a new life into the world is a powerful one. And so I light this candle for all of those who have given birth or partnered in the birth of a child, or those who have adopted a child birthed by someone else for whatever reason, under whatever circumstance.
May
the beginnings and endings in our stories be held in unconditional love and acceptance.
I light the fourth candle for those whose story includes the choice not to conceive or have children. The circumstances vary, the timelines of our lives are diverse, but the freedom to chart the course of our own reproductive life is sacred. I light this candle for all who have made the decision not to conceive or bear children for whatever reason, under whatever circumstance.
May the beginnings and
and the
endings
endings in
of
our
our
stories
stories be
be
held in
held in the
unconditional
unconditional
love
love.
and acceptance.
I light the fifth candle for those whose story includes a forced choice or no choice at all, or who have encountered violence where there should have been tenderness and care. The circumstances vary, the timelines of our lives are diverse, but not everyone has been in a position to control their own reproductive choices. I light this candle for all who have found themselves unable to exercise their own sacred reproductive freedom for any reason, under whatever circumstance.
May the beginnings and endings in our
Endings
story
in our stories
be
be
held
held
in
in
unconditional love
unconditional love and
and
acceptance.
I light the sixth and final candle for those whose reproductive story is still being written. The circumstances vary, the timelines of our lives are diverse, but the future unfolds in surprising and unexpected ways that can be both beautiful and heartbreaking. And so I light this candle for all who are at the threshold, who have agency and choices still to make about their reproductive lives, for whatever reason, under whatever circumstance.
May the beginnings and endings in our stories be held
in
in unconditional love and acceptance. And may the flames of these candles and the many stories they represent remind us of the fire of commitment we carry inside to ensure that all people have freedom and agency over their reproductive choices, and that reproductive justice is upheld as a fundamental right for this and future generations. Thank you. Please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 409, Sleep, My Child, led by Susie Kinnan.
Our closing words are For All the Mothers by Reverend Linda Susan Ulrich. For all the mothers and mother figures, the grandmothers, aunts, and extended family members who mother, the soon-to-be mothers, the wish they were mothers, the never wanted to be mothers, the it's complicated mothers, the birth mothers, foster mothers, adoptive mothers, stepmothers, the used-to-be dad mothers, and more than one mom mothers, the single mothers, separated mothers, stay-at-home mothers, unhoused mothers, the grieving mothers, those who grieve their mothers, and those whose grief is complex. For all the communities that mother, and for all who depend on the great mother, you are held and beloved. Okay. We do have a few announcements to share with you. More information about our events and the congregation are posted in the new weekly newsletter and our website, northwestuu.org. First of all, you're invited to join us for coffee, tea, and light snacks after the service in the multipurpose room. Next, our next Adore session, which stands for A Dialogue on Race and Ethnicity, will be on Monday, May 17th at 7 p.m. What? Wednesday. Oh, I'm sorry. It does say Wednesday. Wednesday, May 17th at 7 p.m. Everyone is invited to view a TED Talk titled The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. We'll also do an exercise and talk about our many identities. Bring a friend, facilitated by Vanessa Washington and Mary Mueller. Join us for the monthly potluck next Sunday on Sunday, March 21st after the service, which is also, maybe it's not, please bring us just to share. And then one thing additional one, Thursdays, there's soup and bread. After the first and third Thursdays, we've been doing games. This month only, it will be the first and fourth Thursdays. So with that, we have Susie has a prelude. I forgot to.